In the dusty capital of Ouagadougou, something dangerous was brewing in the shadows. A deadly plot was underway, a plan to remove the very man who promised to free Burkina Faso from foreign control and corruption, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Just months after rising to power, Traoré had become a symbol of hope for the youth, a leader who stood boldly against the grip of France and the United States, refusing to bow down to their influence. But not everyone wanted him there. Unknown to many, a secret group of soldiers had started holding late-night meetings. They were angry. They said Traoré was too bold and dangerous for business. But what they really meant was, he was a threat to foreign interests and their pockets. Sources say these traitors were contacted by outsiders, believed to be connected to Western agents. The promise? Riches, power, and a fast rise, if they could take him out. The plan was clear and chilling. During Traoré's next visit to the north to meet his commanders, the soldiers would ambush him, blame it on terrorists, and take control of the government. But here's where the twist begins. Unbeknownst to them, Traoré had already been watching. He had built a new intelligence team, loyal not to money, but to the soil of Burkina Faso. These agents had been listening to conversations, tracking meetings, and following money trails. Day by day, the trap was being set. And as the traitors sharpened their knives, Traoré waited in silence, ready to strike when they least expected. The night was thick and quiet in Ouagadougou. Too quiet. Somewhere deep inside the city's military barracks, a small group of soldiers gathered in silence. Faces tight with fear, voices low, they went over the plan one last time. This was it. The night they would betray their president. They had weapons. They had uniforms. They had the timing worked out. And most importantly, they thought no one knew. But what they didn't realize was this. They were being watched. President Traoré's Special Intelligence Unit had been tracking every step. A soldier loyal to Traoré had even infiltrated the group. He had passed on their codes, their meeting points, even what time the assassination was supposed to happen. Hours before they moved, Traoré gave the order. In one coordinated sweep, Burkina Faso's loyal forces moved in. Checkpoints locked. Barracks surrounded. Hidden weapons discovered. One by one, the traitors were arrested. Some were found with large amounts of foreign cash hidden in bags. Others had encrypted messages from foreign numbers. One was even caught with a French-made radio device set to a secret channel. When asked who gave them the mission, most stayed silent. But one broke. He whispered, "They promised us safety, in case it failed." But it didn't just fail, it collapsed. Traoré didn't speak to the public immediately. He stayed quiet. The country didn't even know what had happened that night. But the truth was coming, and Traoré had a message to send, not just to Burkina Faso, but to the whole world. Morning broke over Ouagadougou, but this was no normal day. Crowds began to gather. Rumors spread like fire. Soldiers had been arrested. Something big had happened, and the president was going to speak. Then came the sound of trucks. The people watched, stunned, as dozens of captured soldiers were brought out in chains. Not masked, not hidden. Faces uncovered. These were men some had seen laughing in cafes, commanding troops, wearing medals. But now, they were on their knees, in the hot sun, heads bowed, surrounded by armed guards. President Ibrahim Traoré stood before them, calm, but burning with quiet rage. Behind him, the national flag waved in the wind. He spoke clearly, slowly. No papers, no teleprompter. "These men," he said, pointing to the kneeling soldiers, "are not heroes. They are not patriots. They are traitors." The crowd murmured. Some gasped, some wept, some shouted, "Down with the traitors!" Traoré walked among them, stopping in front of one soldier who used to be his classmate in military school. "You? Even you?" he asked, eyes fixed on the man who couldn't raise his head. Then he turned to the crowd. "They took money from the enemies of Africa, from foreign powers who still believe we are their property. But we are not. We are free people now. There was silence. Then a sudden eruption of cheers, drums, and shouting. People chanted his name. Others cried tears of anger and pride. It wasn't just a parade. It was a message to the traitors, to their foreign sponsors, to the world. Burkina Faso would not fall. The streets of Ouagadougou had barely quieted after the stunning public parade. The image of kneeling traitors under the burning sun, facing the wrathful gaze of President Ibrahim Traoré, was still fresh in the minds of the people. But what shocked the nation even more wasn't just the betrayal. It was who stood behind it. Because this wasn't just a group of greedy soldiers. This wasn't just about jealousy or hunger for power. This was a foreign-backed operation. The unseen strings Traoré's security team had gone through every phone, every laptop, every voice message found on the captured soldiers. What they discovered was bigger than anyone expected. There were encrypted emails, some sent to addresses traced back to private security firms in Europe. Messages written in perfect French and English, not the style used by local soldiers. Some contained phrases like, "Ensure asset is removed before Q4. Priority, neutralize northern visit. Funds approved for secondary team. Avoid exposure." These weren't just military orders. These were the kinds of phrases used by intelligence agencies and covert operations teams. And where did the money come from? Western bank accounts. One officer was caught with over $50,000 in crisp foreign bills, most of it in US dollars and euros. Another had been making weekly contact with a French-speaking agent who claimed to be from a humanitarian group, but whose number was traced back to an embassy building in West Africa. The Western obsession. But why? Why would France or the United States want Traoré gone? Since taking power, Ibrahim Traoré had done something few African leaders dared to do. He cut the chains. He expelled French troops from the country. He shut down foreign mining companies exploiting gold and lithium. He rejected Western aid packages filled with hidden conditions. He strengthened ties with Pan-African allies and non-Western powers, including some in Asia and the Middle East. Traoré made it clear, Africa will no longer kneel, not to France, not to America. We are no one's colony. That terrified the West, because Burkina Faso, though small, was becoming an example that could inspire others, Mali, Niger, Guinea, even parts of East Africa. A wave of leaders rising, not with violence, but with vision, choosing sovereignty over silence. That's when the whispers began. Journalists started getting strange calls. Western outlets published stories calling Traoré a young dictator. International NGOs began warning of democracy at risk. And behind the curtain, plans were drawn. The sleeper cells. The coup plot didn't start in a day. It took months. It began with quiet visits, foreign consultants arriving for security talks. Then came the military training programs, supposedly run to help fight terrorism. But they didn't teach how to fight insurgents. They taught how to seize buildings, control communication towers, and handle high-level targets. Some of the captured traitors had been on training missions to Europe and the US just months before. Others were invited to conferences in coastal African cities where foreign diplomats met them privately. Then weapons started arriving, not through airports, through land routes, hidden in humanitarian convoys, guns with no serial numbers, bullets marked in foreign military codes. And the last piece? Bribes. Money wired to foreign accounts. Promised visas for families if the mission failed. Even promises of positions in a new government, with one soldier being told he would be named Minister of Defense after the takeover. Traoré's patience. But while the plan grew, Traoré remained silent. He let them move. He let them gather. He let the foreign spies believe Burkina Faso was asleep. But all along, his loyal forces were gathering evidence, building the case, and preparing the strike. When the trap was finally sprung, it wasn't just to stop the coup. It was to expose the truth, to show the people and the world that the real enemy wasn't just within the country. It was sitting in expensive offices in Paris, Washington, and Brussels. And now that enemy had been caught, not by force, but by the will of the people and the vision of a young soldier who refused to kneel. The coup had failed. The soldiers who betrayed their own had been exposed and paraded. The hands behind the curtain, the foreign powers, the whispers of France and the United States, had been dragged into the light. But for President Ibrahim Traoré, this was not a moment of celebration. It was a moment of awakening, not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. For 2 days after the parade of the traitors, Traoré spoke nothing. The streets were calm, but filled with tension. Some feared a second attack. Others waited for retaliation from foreign embassies. International media spun the story, calling him a paranoid strongman, a military dictator, a threat to democracy. But within the country, something else was happening. A deep, emotional fire had been lit. Young people flooded the streets, waving flags, painting murals of Traoré's face next to Thomas Sankara's. Women sang songs of resistance. Elders spoke of hope they hadn't felt since independence. Then, on the third evening, Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation. He stood not in a palace or behind bulletproof glass, but on the dusty ground, in the middle of a packed crowd. No suit, no grand podium. Just him, a soldier, a son of the soil. His words were thunder. To my people of Burkina Faso, you have seen what they tried to do. You have seen how your own brothers were turned into tools by those who have always wished to own us. But we are not theirs, not anymore. He paused. The silence was heavy. They sent money. They sent weapons. They sent promises of visas, power, and protection. But what they don't understand is this. Burkina Faso is not for sale. Our land is not for sale. Our blood is not for sale. And our future will never belong to outsiders again. The crowd roared, but he wasn't done. A message to Africa. Then his voice changed. It became deeper, stronger, as if speaking not just to the people in front of him, but to a whole continent. To my brothers and sisters in Mali, in Niger, in Congo, in Sudan, in Senegal, they will come for you too. If you stand up, they will try to break you. If you raise your head, they will try to cut it. They will send agents, preachers, aid workers, peacekeepers, investors. But their true goal is always control. He raised his hand. But now we see clearly. The time of fear is over. The time of kneeling is over. This is the generation of freedom. And I tell every young African, do not be afraid. Build your nations. Protect your people. And when they come with bribes, bombs, and lies, stand firm like the baobab tree rooted in your land. From that day, Traoré's government announced a new doctrine: zero tolerance for foreign military presence, immediate expulsion of NGOs caught funding destabilization efforts, complete control over national resources, no more foreign partners robbing gold, lithium, or oil, investment only with nations that respect Burkina Faso's independence. He even declared that every Burkinabe citizen would be given a short history booklet, teaching them about colonialism, foreign interference, and how to protect their country. A kind of mental liberation to go alongside the political one. Western governments, embarrassed and alarmed, issued weak statements. France denied involvement. The U.S. remained vague. Some called for sanctions. Others warned of instability. But across the Sahel, something was shifting. In Mali, people held rallies of support. In Niger, citizens demanded the same purge of traitors. In Guinea, youths shared videos of Traoré's speech with pride. It spread like wildfire. He had become not just a president. He had become a symbol. a young African leader, unbought and unbowed, who stood up and won. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Traoré left the crowd with one final message. They tried to kill me, but I survived. Not because I am special, but because I walk with the people, and as long as I do, no foreign bullet, no paid traitor, and no Western Empire can bring me down. Long live Burkina Faso. Long live a free Africa. The earth shook with applause, and so the story of the failed assassination became something more than survival. It became a lesson, a warning, a call to rise. From the dry winds of Ouagadougou to the busy streets of Accra, Addis Ababa, and Kinshasa, Africa was waking up, and it would not go back to sleep